The West Virginia 2026 football schedule is officially here, and we are here to talk about it on this episode of Mountaineer Moment. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment. My name is Troy. I am your host here on Mountaineer Moment. This is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us? YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. Hit that subscribe button and join the Mountaineer Moment movement, as I like to call it, as we continue to grow this thing. This is episode 133, and we haven't talked football in a while here. Just for time, and basketball team doing what they're doing, several games, obviously a couple games a week and pregame and postgame coverage with that. Football, we haven't talked as much, obviously, about recruiting, transfer portal, who West Virginia's brought in, as freshmen, and I thought it would be a good time right now, as Mountaineer basketball is out west, Arizona State coming off that win, and then heading to Arizona on Saturday, number 1 Arizona. That'll be fun. We'll have an episode previewing that game coming up after this one. But for episode 133, we're going to talk about this West Virginia football schedule that's officially out for 2026. We're not going to go like crazy and go game by game, win-loss, win-loss, win-win, loss-loss. Like, we're not going to do that for a variety of different reasons. Reason number one, first and foremost, it is January, and they don't play until August. They don't play until September this year, actually, so even more of a reason not to do that. So they were months and months and months away from them playing. Their roster, while it's continuing to be filled out, we're learning more. We'll talk about that toward the end of the episode. I mean, you just don't know who you are. You don't know who you're going to be facing with these teams when the season comes in, again, months. And so I'm not going to be one of those guys who's going to preview this thing and go win, loss, win. Like, I'm just not going to do that at this point. Because it's January, and if I need to further explain myself on that one, you can leave a comment, and we can go back and forth and talk about that. But what I will do over the course of this episode is just some quick observations, some things that you notice, right? Some things that you like, don't like, some things that you might think, oh, that's going to be tough, or that's going to be, a favorable matchup or a favorable schedule. Like, those things I will say, but I'm not going to predict wins and losses here on this episode right here in late January. So quick observations, right? Some of the obvious things that you notice here. West Virginia's first 4 games, they are either at home or on a neutral field. That being Saturday the 19th, they're playing UVA, University of Virginia Cavaliers, neutral field in Charlotte on Saturday, September 19th. They open up conference play at home against Oklahoma State, a team obviously that struggled tremendously last season and the year before that. And their first road game of the year is not until October 3rd. Not until October 3rd for their first true road game against an Iowa State team who obviously has been gutted with their head coach heading over to Penn State and taking a lot of people with them and all that fun stuff. So they're going to be a whole new different team. A lot of these teams are going to look different and new and different challenges and different things that we're going to find out about these teams week after week in the Big 12. But initial observation, well, you take that into consideration. Mountaineers have 7 games. They play a 12-game schedule. They have 7 games at home at Milan Puskar Stadium. 7 games at home. They only go on the road 4 times, and they have 1 neutral game. You can't complain about that, right? 7 games at home, 4 true road games. That's it. 4 true road games, 3 of which are coming between Saturday the 24th of October and November 28th. So 3 out of 5 games down the stretch are on the road, and a couple of those are real tough. We'll talk about that too. But you're only on the road 4 times. You're at home 7 times, and you got UVA in Charlotte, where the Mountaineers are going to make a great showing down there, make the trip down to Charlotte for that game. So that's observation number 1. Number 2, and again, this isn't going to be the longest episode in the world, but I would say, I'm not sitting here making predictions. After all that, it's going to be like, all right, I think they're going to win this one. No. I think a strong start is possible because their first half of the season, now again, context, you throw in the non-conference opponents that they have, your start to the season is easier on paper than your back half of the season. So West Virginia starts at home against Coastal Carolina Saturday, September 5th. Then you got UT Martin of the FCS. Then you got Virginia in a neutral game. Then you go to Oklahoma State, and then you got Iowa State before you're back home for Arizona. And then you're through 6 games right there. You played 1 on the road. Again, against an Oklahoma State team that struggled last season, against an Iowa State team that's been gutted. Then you get Arizona at home on Saturday, October 10th. So the first half of the season, right, there's an opportunity. Rich Rod in his second season, right, you're not going to Ohio this year where it was a trap game and you lost, right? You were 2-1 in non-conference this year, or this, in 2025, but here in 2026, there's some opportunities to start this season 3-0 in non-conference, beat UVA. Certainly you can do that. UVA went to the ACC championship. I get it. Oklahoma State, Iowa State, again, who knows what those teams are going to really look like, including UVA. But there's an opportunity to start this season really, really well on paper based on how you set yourself up and based on your non-conference slate and your early conference opponents in Big 12 play. So that's a noticeable thing. Again, your first road game being against Iowa State, a team that's completely wiped out. And then if you look at the back half of this schedule, Iowa State, then Arizona, second half of the season, quite literally back 6. You got Cincinnati at home. You got TCU and Texas Tech, both of those on the road, back-to-back. You do have a bye week in between those games. Now, I get Texas Tech. We know who they are. We know what they're looking to do even next season, get back to the CFP. But that's going to be a tough game on the road. The good news is you're coming off a bye. Texas Tech will not be coming off a bye. I forget who they play in between. But they play on Saturday the 31st of October, Halloween. But West Virginia, Cincinnati, TCU October 24th, then a bye, and then you go on the road to Texas Tech. Then you're back home for 2. Kansas and Houston before you hit the road. Saturday the 28th of November, regular season finale on the road in Utah, facing the Utes. And so that's, on paper, you look at that, Texas Tech and Utah, 2 of your last 4 games and your last 2 road games, that easier said than done. Obviously, that could be a potentially difficult second half for your Mountaineers. But quick observations here as we do look at this schedule. Obviously, there's some notable teams in the Big 12 that are not here. You don't have BYU on the schedule. Who else do you not have on the schedule? You don't have BYU. You don't have, who else did the Mountaineers play this year? You have Kansas, you have Utah, you don't have UCF, you don't have Colorado, you don't have Arizona State, you don't have Baylor, and maybe one more, right? But there's some teams out there. Obviously BYU, you avoid them this year. You got Texas, you played them last year at BYU. You played Texas Tech in 2025, but now you got them in 2026 on the road, which will be tough. You don't have Kansas State either in this slate here. And, but it's hard to make complaint about this schedule. It seems like the trendy thing, what teams are doing nowadays is they're scheduling some more cupcakes in the non-conference. You like to see that West Virginia, has a couple teams, because there's been, what was it, a couple years ago, we had Pitt and Penn State. Seems like teams are getting away from that. West Virginia only had, as far as Power 5 schools are concerned, they only had Pitt in 2025. They only have UVA in 2026. So, again, just 4 road games, 1 neutral against Virginia, and then 7 home games. And by the looks of it, it's a backloaded schedule a little bit because you got Texas Tech and Utah, your last 2 road games of the season. So that is worth mentioning there. Now, one of the reasons, obviously, that we're not going win-loss is because in the era of college football that we currently are in 2026, it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. You're learning, we know with basketball, you're learning new players, new faces, new coaches year after year after year. Well, the West Virginia football team, when Neil Brown gets out, Rich Rod comes in, There's 81 new players on this roster in 2025. And frankly, it wasn't the season we were hoping for, right? We were super optimistic. Maybe not super optimistic. We were more optimistic than a 4-8 record here in 2025. It's just the reality of it, right? We were hoping to be a little bit better. We weren't. And now, all of a sudden, same coaching staff, different, some pieces moved around, but you lose a lot of seniors. You lose a lot of talent to the transfer portal, including Cam Vaughn off to Miami, including Jaheim White off to North Texas, including Nico Markey gone, Rodney Gallagher at Arizona. I mean, they're up and down the offense and the defense. There's guys that have made the decision to leave. With that said, it's easy to be excited about the future of this team, we think, because of what Rich Rod has done in recruiting. Really impressive freshman class coming in. And in the transfer portal, they've gotten to work and they've recruited needs, right? They've done a lot of work on the offensive line. Again, this is not something we've talked about a ton here on Mountaineer Moment, but we'll talk about it now as part of this schedule breakdown. The transfer portal, West Virginia has, the portal I think is closed right now, but you're going to open back up and fill some needs again, here real soon. But for West Virginia, you went out and filled some needs, especially on that offensive line, especially in the wide receiver room, so the window closed, a 15-day window, January 2nd to January 16th, so it's been closed for about a week, and, we know the deal there, but transfer portal, you came in, you got a quarterback from Oklahoma, Micah Hawkins Jr., that is one player we have talked about extensively. If you did not watch that special episode with me and a resource I like to call him, he's just an Oklahoma fan, passionate Oklahoma fan, my friend Cam, who broke down Mikey Hawkins for us on an episode a couple weeks back, so you can go check out that one. But Rich got to work in the portal, recruited, again, you bring a quarterback over from Oklahoma, he's going to turn some heads, hopefully. At the very least, we're going to have a quarterback competition between he and Scotty Fox. We know Scotty Fox is staying. We thought Cam Vaughn was staying. He's not. There's lots of new players, and I think the one question that is fair for all of us to ask is, well, there was a lot of new players last year, and we got really excited last year, and it just simply didn't work. So what makes this year's players different? And I don't fully have the answer to that. The one thing I will say is Rich Rod has been here a year now. He knows what the needs fully are. I think by the time Rich got here last year, hit the recruiting trail, on the transfer portal trail, it's hard. And we thought we brought in some really good talent. I still think we brought in some decent talent, but obviously it wasn't talent enough. And at some points, right, you're late in the game, you're scrambling, you're going to, for lack of a better way of saying it, get desperate and go recruit somebody who maybe you would have liked some better options, but there were no other options available for you at the time. Right? Can we say that? So the transfer portal with what Rich Rod's doing now, what makes it different? Well, I don't know. We're just going to have to find out between September and November, because that's the season that we're going to find this thing out in, and it's months from now. But you like to see what Rich Rod has done in meeting needs, and we'll start along that offensive line. They bring in Wes King, an offensive lineman from Wyoming, who's been really, really good in pass protection. That's actually a theme of these guys I'm going to mention. He didn't allow a single snap in 1,750 snaps. Texas wanted him, if that tells you anything. Amari Grayson, another offensive lineman from Jacksonville State, just 9 pressures and 1 sack on 377 plays this season, if you just look at what they're saying about him. Cameron Griffin from Jacksonville State, a versatile lineman who's going to be a help on this team. You got Devin Vass from Kansas State, who did not allow a sack in 199 plays this season, right? There's a theme with some of these offensive linemen you bring in. Karsten Cassidy from UConn, you bring him in along the offensive line. Who else? Let me see here. Yeah, but you met some needs, right? The kid from Wyoming, not allowing a sack in forever. several guys along this offensive line who haven't given up sacks or many at all in their careers. And so that's an important thing. Rich Rod, we had a big question. You can go back and watch. Big question in August of last year saying, well, I like some of the pieces we got, but the offensive line is still a question. The hope is that this offensive line is no longer a question and that we are going to move some guys up front, make room in pass protection, create a clean pocket, and make room for the running backs to go through there. Obviously, nation's leading rusher in Cam Cook comes over as well, so that's a massive get too. Just a massive get. Nation's leading rusher. So you like to see that. And then at receiver, you bring in some guys from big schools, right? You got DJ Epps, Teron Francis, and Prince Strachan. Cam Vaughn, you lose. Obviously, that is a loss. Although some people are hating on it, like I don't know, but I think that is a loss. It is a loss. So Michael Hawkins Jr., Scotty Fox Jr. There's a quarterback competition in Morgantown, and it's a little different from what we saw last season because we saw 5 guys, kind of at the quarterback competition. I think it's going to be between these two. I don't know when it's going to be decided. I don't know if we're going to wait till kickoff of the first game to decide this thing. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of both of these guys early or even throughout the season. I don't know. No one knows. Rich does not know the answer to that at this point. But you bring in a guy from Oklahoma, he wants to play ball. Oklahoma is QBU over the last couple decades of college football, and so that kid can really run. If you haven't seen some of his tape, that game against Auburn is unbelievable. Threw a deep ball really well in that game. You know, his one limitation, obviously, if he can really run the football, then why didn't he start at Oklahoma more? Well, because his arm maybe isn't as good, right? If his arm was Pat Mahomes, right, he'd be starting every game, and he wouldn't have transferred to West Virginia. Just saying. So that's the deal. I mean, recruiting portal. I mean, you like what you're seeing. You really have to like what you're seeing. But I would challenge you and me to proceed with, cautious, being cautiously optimistic moving forward. Because, I mean, I bought into the hype train. I'm just here to tell you, I was on board in 2025, and while I hope and I think that we have a better shot to be better in 2026 and new pieces and new players, and we got a quarterback and nation's leading runner and an offensive line that's rebuilt and retooled, like I'm bought in. But I'm bought in with some caution because I've watched this movie before in 2025. And along the defensive side of the ball, we haven't talked nearly as much about the defense, but you brought in some guys from again some big name schools. You got a DB from LSU, you got a safety from Andre Powderell from UNLV, Isaiah Patterson from UNLV, Malik Hawkins, obviously the brother of the quarterback, a cornerback from Oklahoma, Malachi Hoods from Illinois, Jacob Bradford, that's the guy I was thinking of. Jacob Bradford comes from LSU, was a top 200 recruit in the 2025 class. We'll see what kind of role he steps into. Teron Francis is a wide receiver from LSU, big-time recruit in 2025. Again, kind of the same thing with Oklahoma. If LSU's recruiting you to play wide receiver, that's wide receiver you, and you're coming to Morgantown, we'll take that. DJ Epps comes from Troy. Mentioned Devin Vass, the O-lineman, comes from K-State. Got an edge rusher, Toby Hastrup from Oregon, who's an absolute freak. One of the big recruits who didn't see a lot of action at Oregon, but West Virginia, obviously he'll be in the lineup. Got a corner from Wisconsin. Obviously Michael Hawkins from Oklahoma. I'm reading Skylar Callahan's article on West Virginia on SI. Safety from Memphis, Kamari Wilson. Jacksonville State transfers, and then obviously Skylar Callahan rates Cam Cook as the number one transfer portal get for West Virginia, nation's leading runner a season ago. So happy to have him in Morgantown. But West Virginia's schedule, again, 7 at home, 4 on the road, and 1 neutral. and you avoid BYU, you got obviously the tough ones on this list, the one that you're like, oh, no, you got to play Texas Tech on the road. The other one, right, in my opinion, the other one that's like, oh, no, you got to play Utah on the road the last game. Both of those come in the month of November, just a few weeks apart. So those are the woo, okay, that's going to be tough. But aside from that, we don't really know what everybody else has. It's January still, man, so we're going to take it one day at a time, 1 month at a time for sure. And more on the football talk later. But wanted to get just a little preview, a little breakdown of the football schedule, some things that we notice, obvious observations for us, as they say on Three Guys Before the Game, too. So anyway, we will see you next time on Mountaineer Moment. Next episode is going to be a preview of the Mountaineer basketball team and the Arizona Wildcats. #1, undefeated Arizona Wildcats. We'll talk about that one next. So we'll see you next time.